Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy NFL Week 2 edition of the show. Ian Cameron, and joining us once again, Craig the Leg Peterson to help us break down Week 2 in the NFL. Craig, before we get into Week 2 game by game, and of course we'll start with Thursday Night Football, just your thoughts on Week 1. Teams that surprised you in a good way, teams that surprised you in a bad way. How did things go for you on the betting board last week? Just some overall overview thoughts on Week 1.
Not too bad, actually. Just want to say thanks again for having me on. Um, Big week. I mean, first week, everyone's playing. A lot of hype with the new NFL season. A lot of games went certain ways. A lot of games went other ways that you would never even think to imagine. So, the really weird one for me was the Patriots game. Obviously, I think I ended up picking them at less than five. Or no, I think I just had them over 4.5 wins. I think I had them at 5. They already got one. I just didn't see that coming really. With a Cincinnati just coming out of the gate, just stagnant. Quarterback wasn't really doing too much. Burrow had a rough day, and then I was big into the Bills game, man, with Josh Allen, and that's going to be my highlight game today because that divisional game, big rivalry. Before getting into any of that, I just want to say, shout out to the Cowboys for actually coming through, with the Browns.
We'll get into that more when we talk Dallas and when we talk Cleveland. And that's always the thing about, especially after week 1 of the season and you're going into week 2. We call it overreaction week. There's going to be teams that look absolutely phenomenal, and we're ready to say, hey, this team's going to have a great season. They're going to be in the mix for the Super Bowl after just one game. And then for the teams that looked awful last week, Carolina stands out, and there were definitely a few others as well. You're ready to say, hey, they're going to have a miserable season. This is one of the worst teams in the NFL, but it's important not to just assume those things after seeing just one piece of evidence, if you will, one game for these teams out of a long 17 game body of work. But there's no doubt, I will say, with Dallas, they were impressive. But it's one of those deals where how much of it was Dallas looking great and how much of it was ineptitude from the Cleveland Browns and how much of it was horrible quarterback play from Deshaun Watson and how much of it was two starting tackles being out for the Cleveland Browns on the offensive line. They didn't have Jedrick Wills. They didn't have Jack Conklin, the left tackle or the right tackle in that game. So it's one of those deals where, Dallas was great. I think the opponent looking awful, playing a terrible football game, had a lot to do with it as well. But it's always the kind of things you have to evaluate after week 1.
Of course. And that Jets game too. Don't sleep on the Jets. I mean, listen, I understand.
That's a tough ask in week 1. Out to San Francisco 49ers that are always a perennial contender, and talk what you want about, Robert Saleh had all summer to prepare, and he didn't look like he did a good enough job, especially with his side of the ball defense. He's a defensive guy by background, and they got chewed up and spit out. Couldn't stop the run against not Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, a sudden late starting running back announcement because of the injury to McCaffrey that kept him out. That was a bad look for Saleh, because defense is his bread and butter, and that was the thing that I don't want to hear about Rodgers. It's got nothing to do with Rodgers.
Yeah,
Rodgers,
no.
I didn't have an issue with him. Was he great? No, but he wasn't terrible. He didn't make too many mistakes. The one interception was a tip ball. Nothing he could have done there. That is about the defense. That is about Robert Saleh and his specialty not getting the job done and getting run over by a San Francisco offense that just had Trent Williams coming back into the fold. I don't even think he played every snap. Trent Williams, and they still ran over that Jets defense with the run game without Christian McCaffrey, with Jordan Mason instead. So it's a bad look for Saleh, but it also shows you how tough that assignment is, Craig, for the Jets. One of the best teams in the NFL on the road, and a guy like Shanahan, who's also had all summer to prepare. And clearly you saw he did a nice job getting that team ready.
Oh, yeah, and especially with McCaffrey being out. We didn't even know that until about an hour or two before the game started. Just for you guys out there who do a bit of betting, I wouldn't place bets, man, until you know who's playing, because that could change strategies, that could change betting. If you have the overs and unders and whatnot, that just be careful before placing bets if you don't know exactly who is starting and who's not starting, especially big players like Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, that Jets offense, man, that first drive, they put together a wonderful drive to go up 7-3. Aaron Rodgers was quarterbacking it, and I liked what I saw. But from the defensive end, my God, it just goes to show you how well prepared and well coached the 49ers really are.
Yeah.
To take a second team running back and make him look like he was an all-pro running back that game. I mean, you got to give it to the offensive line too. That's another thing that really has it going for San Francisco. And I watch out for the 49ers, man. Usually when you see teams lose Super Bowls, I think they're like, I don't even know. Maybe I don't know what the statistic is. I probably should have looked that up, but it's not very good. Their first game coming out from that hangover from losing the Super Bowl. And they came out and they put it on the Jets, man. They were at home. They wanted to show them what's going on. They wanted to prove a point to the league, what they're doing exactly as a defensive team, but not only that, but offensively as well. Jake Moody, 6 field goals. 6 field goals. Just imagine. That's a lot of red zones, man. That's a lot of points, a lot of red zones. But just imagine if Christian McCaffrey was in there, what they would have been able to do on those third down conversions and get those. It's a lot of points they could have put up rather than, I think, 32.
No doubt. That's definitely a situation where they could have definitely been more effective offensively for sure. What a performance by Kansas City last week with the win against Baltimore, the opening night game, which was a phenomenal game. Philadelphia beats Green Bay. Green Bay loses the game, and worse than that, Green Bay loses their quarterback, Jordan Love, for the next month. And it's Malik Willis time, and I have some very strong thoughts on Malik Willis, and I will save that for the Colts and the Packers preview coming up later in the show. Sunday night game was great. Rams and Lions down to the wire, goes to overtime. Lions again get the best of the Rams. Big time injury concerns with the LA Rams. And again, I will save that for when we talk Rams Cardinals, but lots of injury concerns for the Rams coming out of that game, especially along the offensive line where they got decimated by injuries in that game against Detroit. All right, let's get to it. We've got week 2 ahead. We'll put week 1 in the rearview mirror. It's kind of an up and down week 1 for me. I find week 1, which used to be one of my best weeks historically, betting NFL football, is now one of the tougher weeks. Why? Because nobody plays in the preseason anymore. No starters. I mean, you're basically betting week 1 with these starters offensively and defensively on all these teams, especially a lot of the quarterbacks getting very little, if any, time on the field in the preseason. And it makes it a little bit more of a crapshoot, in my opinion, in week 1. So we'll see how week 2 goes. And we start off week 2 with a dandy. And if I'm Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit on Amazon Prime calling this game tonight, I'm saying, thank God we finally got a good Thursday night game to be able to call. And actually, the Amazon schedule is a little bit better this year, I think, as far as quality games. And this is absolutely a quality game. Battle for first in the AFC East, a rematch of the final game of the regular season last year, which decided the AFC East championship in Miami, which the Bills won. The Bills and the Dolphins, AFC East rivals, take clash here on Thursday Night Football to kick off week 2. Miami 2.5-point home favorites, 48.5 the total in this game. We'll start with the Bills side of the equation. Bad first half against Arizona, no question about that. Huge concern still for them defensively. I don't mind the pass rush. They've got Gregory Rousseau at a good second half against Arizona. They've got, obviously, A.J. Epinesa. They've got Ed Oliver. They've got pass rush there. Vaughn, of course, and certain snaps. They're putting him on a snap count in order to keep him fresh and keep him ready later in the game. But I think the bigger issues for the Bills is linebacker. You've already lost Matt Milano, and you're just by default, you're weaker at the linebacker spot without Matt Milano for a second straight year. Just brutal to see him get hurt again for a second straight season. A great player, an important player on this Bills defense at the linebacker spot. It's 2 new starting safeties. That is a work in progress for the Bills. And the cornerback spots, again, we talk about new corners, and one of them, guy that I thought was one of the most improved players on the Bills secondary since the start of last season, Taron Johnson, was expected to be a big part of this secondary. I thought played great last year, gets injured last week against Arizona, and he's out for this game tonight, and that's a huge loss for a team that doesn't have that depth and that quality as much in the secondary compared to what they've seen in past years. So I do worry about how this Bills defense will hold up here. And let's be honest, Arizona moved the football, Kyler Murray and company, James Conner on the ground pretty well against Buffalo, even in a losing cause last week. So I have some concerns about the Bills defense here. Flip it around to the other side of the ball. The Miami offense did not look great week 1 against Jacksonville. They escaped with the win, 17-14. But let's not forget, that game was about to be over. It was about to be, 21-7 for Jacksonville. And then there was that Travis Etienne fumble right by the goal line. And that was a touchdown that I think was going to put the game away for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And sure enough, Miami recovers the fumble, and they end up going right down the field, and they make it a game right after that. And they end up coming back to win 20-17. But, at that moment in time, it was about to be good night for the Miami Dolphins. If they had gone down, it was 17-7 Jacksonville at the time of the fumble, would have been 24-7. And that fumble changed the game. Miami came back, but this was not a great performance. You have to believe, too, just the chaos involving Tyreek Hill before the game and the arrest and, the detainment that happened. I think it definitely shook the team up. They didn't look at all in sync, ready, focused in the first half of that game. It definitely took until beyond halftime for them to kind of wake up and get their senses going. The numbers were fine for Tua Tagovailoa, 338 yards through the air. Obviously, Hill and Waddle, both of them 100-plus receiving yards, and that's going to be a huge concern here for the Bills secondary. The linebackers, my gosh, you talk about challenge. No Milano in linebacker spot, 2 new safeties, Taron Johnson out in the secondary, and you got to defend Hill and Waddle. It's going to be a good challenge here for this Bills defense tonight, without a doubt. I would think Miami's a little more fluid on offense tonight. Jacksonville, I think, defensively is probably going to be a little bit better this year. Bills have a lot of concerns. This total is coming down quite a bit, 50.5. At 50.5, I wasn't going to touch the total. I thought, a little too high for me to take it over at that number, but I'm starting to see 48 appear with the total now. So that's a 2.5-point drop. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some value starting to show on that over at 48.5, because I see Buffalo being able to move the ball here. Josh Allen still played a very good game against Arizona. I know he had the early fumble, and there is some concern about the helicopter spin touchdown that he ran in against Arizona, where he got hit on his non-throwing hand and injured it, and concern that might affect him tonight. Remember, it's on his non-throwing hand. So I still think he's going to be okay as far as throwing the football. He's got a run game he can rely on now with James Cook, and that's the thing, too, about the Bills. They're running the football a lot more under new OC Joe Brady, of course, who took over midstream last season. They've been running the football quite a bit more with Joe Brady, so it's more of a balanced offense. They don't want to have Josh Allen throw it, 30, 40 times a game, especially when you're working in a revamped, rebuilt receiving core, right? You got the rookie Keon Coleman. You've got a bunch of guys that you're bringing in, Curtis Samuel. How about Mac Hollins? I mean, this guy's actually really impressed me for Buffalo. This was a guy they picked up off the scrap heap, and essentially he gets one of their touchdowns last week against Arizona, played really well. So maybe this receiving core is not going to be in as bad shape as you would think. And then, of course, you're fine at tight end when you're talking about the duo of Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. So I think both teams will have some success moving the ball. Buffalo against Miami's defense, which does have Jalen Phillips on the field to start the year. He played in week 1, but still doesn't have Bradley Chubb. Now it's going to be Ramsey, and the corners for Miami are definitely better than the corners for Arizona. I don't think that's much of a stretch. I think Arizona is going to have a pretty wretched defense, and especially in the secondary this year. Miami will be a tougher challenge in the secondary for that Bills passing attack and this new revamped receiving core. That being said, I still think the Bills can move the ball, and with the Buffalo issues at linebacker, and it really along the entire back 7, linebacker, the 2 new starting safeties, the injury to Johnson in the cornerback spot, this could be trouble having to defend Hill, Waddle, and all those dynamic, explosive, and speedy Miami Dolphins receivers. So I think this game goes over at 48.5. That's the bet I like the most. Buffalo is 11-2 in the last 13 meetings against Miami. They've owned this series. Even last year when Miami was expected to give the Bills their biggest challenge, Buffalo still won both regular season meetings, including the Sunday night finale to end the season to win the division in Miami. Now, this is a circled spot for Miami. Make no question about it. At home against the Bills, the team that beat them for the division in the final game of the year. So I know Miami's going to bring it, and that's probably why I'm going to back off taking Buffalo. But at anything 2.5, if it hits 3, though, I might be tempted to put a little Buffalo Bills in my pocket, because I think if it gets to that number, I would think there's definitely a good chance we see this a field goal game either way, and +3 with Buffalo, I think, would have a little bit of value. I lean Buffalo for sure. I don't know if I'm going to get there with a bet, but I am going to get involved with this total now that it's gone down to 48.5. Craig, what do you think here? Thursday night football, a great game to start week 2, Bills-Dolphins.
These are two high-powered offenses. Yeah, at the end of the day, you got to think about them moving down the field. Obviously, with Josh Allen, Tagovailoa, it's got. I think it's going to be a shootout. That 48.5 is, you touch 49. I mean, that's 7 touchdowns total. I see that possibly getting at least halfway, if not more than that, in the first half. Obviously the defenses are a little sus on both sides of the ball, or on both teams, I should say. Tyreek Hill, Waddle, like you said, 7 catches for Tyreek Hill for 130 last week. Obviously a TUD that's 18.6 a catch. That's insane. And then you look at the other side of the ball with James Cook, I think, had 3 catches, which was tied for the second most on the team. For the Buffalo Bills. It's going to be a shootout. Josh Allen threw for 232 with two TUDs, obviously. Had 2 TUDs himself rushing the ball. So you just got to look for that dynamic duo attack. Think about it. If you have a rushing quarterback, and this speaks for all teams, you are more likely to get third down conversions if the play, goes haywire, right? If it's not open, your first look's not open, your second look's not open, the check down's not open, you can then run the ball. Both of these teams can do that. Both of these teams have quarterbacks to continue drives going down the field. Is it going to be more of a field goal game? I don't think so. I think these teams are high powered enough where we're going to see a lot of points put up on the board. I like the over at 48.5. And I'm not sleeping on the Bills, man. I think Josh Allen has what it takes. Obviously, Tua, it's his second, third year playing. I mean, he has what it takes, but I like history, man. I like stats. I like all that stuff, and the Bills have Miami's number. And if you think about it, the Bills last year, when they did beat Miami in Miami has pretty much the same team for the most part. So, I don't really see it going a different way. Buffalo's going to be ready. They want to go 2-0. They want to own the series this year. They want to be number 1 in the conference, the division, I should say. And it's a division rivalry. That's why I know it's going to be a close game as well. This is a big game for both teams. I think Miami at home doesn't really hold a lot of value for me being at home. A lot of these guys are used to playing in humid weather and maybe I think Buffalo has the edge toward, the latter
This is
part
a
of the year.
huge advantage, Craig. I just want to say this is a huge advantage for Buffalo. This is a night game, Thursday night, because the humidity and the sun is not going to be beaming down on their sideline. The one big advantage Miami always has with home games in early September, when it's a Sunday afternoon and the sun is just pouring down on the visitors' bench, and they're out in the sun and the humidity is just draining them.
Yeah.
By the second half, they're winded. But that's not going to be a factor here, though, because it's a night game. So that's a huge boot. That's a huge benefit for Buffalo. And, of course, when they played in Miami last year, it was late in the season, right? Early January, and it was a night game.
Yep. And like you said, it's not as humid. You're not getting that sun beating down on you the entire game. And Miami's used to that. But here's the thing. You're right. It's Thursday night football. It doesn't really matter at that point. Yeah, it's going to hit you, but that team is going to be prepared. Let me tell you that they will be prepared tonight. Like I said, I like the over, and honestly, I like the Bills at -2.5. I think that they might win this by a field goal. To be honest, I think it's going to come down to that at the end of the game. I think it's going to be a shootout back and forth. I think you're going to see a lot of passing, a lot of running on third down from quarterbacks. But James Cook, 19 carries for 71 yards.
Yep.
I mean, he's a workhorse, man. He's a workhorse. And then obviously he had 32 yards in the air. So Josh Allen has weapons. Coleman is a rookie. I get that. He might struggle a little bit with this defense, but I really see, guys like Hollins and Shakir kind of hopefully having a game that I thought they would have had the first game, but it is what it is. But at the end of the day, man, I think this is going to be a great game. It's going to be close. I don't think there's a blowout here like we saw a lot of games in week one. They have tape on each other, from week one. So that they're going to be able to, develop a game plan for both defenses. And, we'll see what happens, man. But I like the Bills away here.
No doubt. We're spending a little more time on this game just because it's a great game, big game Thursday night. And I do want to mention a couple player props as well, just before we move on to Sunday's games. I like, there's a couple props that stand out for me here with Thursday night football. Tua's over passing yards. I think he can get there because of the state of the Bills secondary. It is in a little bit of a state of concern for this game tonight. And that's true. I mean, we're talking about Hill and Waddle both getting 100 yards receiving each. So there's like 200 right there potentially. And so Tua in his receiving prop here, which is in the, I think, 260 range, he can probably get over that number. And what if the Dolphins are trailing late? So over 264.5 with the Tua passing yards, I could see it. I like Kincaid over receptions and receiving yards. He wasn't a big factor in the game against Arizona. I think this is a little bit of a better matchup for him as far as getting open over the middle of the field. And the other receiver I'm targeting for the Bills is Keon Coleman, just because his number is only 44.5, 45.5. I mean, what did he have? 51 receiving yards last week. So that would clear this number as well. And I think he's only going to get better, more comfortable, as the game goes along. So I'm very much interested in his props. And I think Tua too, and that could benefit the over. Let's not forget they're banged up in the running back spot tonight. Devon Achane has already been ruled out. Raheem Mostert's going to play, but I'm not sure he's totally 100% either. Both of those guys were banged up throughout the practice week for Miami. So if both of their running backs are injured, you could see Tua put the ball in the air a little bit more here tonight. So another reason why I'm kind of thinking maybe Miami does throw it a bit more than they often would. Like Mike McDaniel wants them to be balanced. He wants the run game to be part of what they do, but he has both of his running backs, Mostert and Achane, banged down. And Achane's not even going to be dressed and playing tonight. So that could force Miami's hand to throw the ball a little bit more here in this game tonight. All right, let's go to Sunday. We've got the Las Vegas Raiders and the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore 8.5-point home favorites, 41.5 the total in this game. I ain't drinking the Baltimore Kool-Aid, Craig. I'm not. I know a lot of people say that, wait, this is going to be an AFC contender again. They're going to be great again. Lamar Jackson. And look, Lamar Jackson's credit, he played great against Kansas City. He did. He played a really good football game. You really can't say too much about it other than you can't miss Zay Flowers wide open in the end zone at the end of the fourth quarter there. That's a touchdown waiting to happen. He just totally missed him. And then, of course, you make the throw to Isaiah Likely, and just a little piece of his toe ends up on the out of bounds line, and of course ruled incomplete. They fall short in their comeback bid against Kansas City. And look, you talk about tough assignments. We talked about how the Jets had a tough game against San Francisco to open the year on the road. Doesn't get much tougher than Kansas City, Arrowhead Stadium, and Patrick Mahomes on the road for Baltimore. Now this is a step down in class. You're back home and you're taking on the Las Vegas Raiders, who honestly did not look very good, especially on offense last week against the Chargers. Gardner Minshew, the mustache man, he is what he is. Dink and dunk, short to intermediate passes. He's going to really, it's going to be methodical. It's an offense that I think when you look at it, the quarterback spot's a concern. The offensive line is still a little bit of a concern as well for the Las Vegas Raiders. That being said, you look at where this point spread is, Craig, 8.5. You got to score points if you're going to cover this kind of number. And the one thing the Raiders have is one hell of a defense. And even in the loss last week against the Chargers, we saw how good that defense can be. I mean, it was a struggle for Justin Herbert and the Chargers to get whatever they did against the against the Las Vegas Raiders. I know they ended up with the 22 points in that game, but let's not forget, I think one of those touchdowns was set up by a short field as well. Still, for the majority of that game, I thought it was a pretty solid effort from the Las Vegas Raiders. The one thing that would concern me, though, is, J.K. Dobbins did do a number, on that Raiders run defense, and I'm not sure I necessarily saw that. They did a good job keeping Herbert in check. He only had 144 passing yards, and obviously they should be pretty good in terms of that because that pass rush led by Max Crosby certainly formidable for the Las Vegas Raiders. They are going to have to shore up that run defense, and that would be something that would concern me about the Raiders in this matchup, because I think Todd Monken, and we saw it against Kansas City, finally got it drilled through his head, something he should have figured out in the AFC Championship game last year, that this should be a run-first offense with the way the personnel is here with Lamar and with our ability to run the football, and knowing that we still have a few question marks at receiver. When you're talking, I like Zay Flowers. Rashad Bateman's capable. I like the Andrews and Likely. And by the way, Likely should be the number one tight end. I love Mark Andrews and the great run he's had in Baltimore, but he's had a lot of injuries. He's not as dynamic at that spot as Likely. It's time to flip the switch, and it's Likely should be the number one tight end. Or at the very least, split the reps 50-50, with Mark Andrews. That's what it should be, because I think it was clear as day to anyone watching that Ravens-Chiefs game last week that Likely it looks like the more dynamic, explosive, big play tight end compared to Mark, especially with the injuries that Mark Andrews has suffered the last few years. It's really debilitated a lot of his foot speed as well. And that's something that you really get concerned about. This is an interesting game. I'll tell you what, Craig, I'll say it right now. If I'm betting this game from a side perspective, it's Raiders or nothing. I'm not laying 8.5 with Baltimore. I'm not comfortable in this price range with them. I know they've been pretty good at home over the years. They're off a loss on a Thursday night, so it actually gives John Harbaugh and the coaching staff a little extra time to prepare. But I'm not ready to lay 8.5 with Baltimore. I'm interested in Las Vegas, but they did have a couple injuries coming out of that Chargers game. I am concerned about the run defense, which, again, gave up 150 to J.K. Dobbins, the former Raven, last week with the L.A. Chargers. And that's not what you want to see from your run defense going up against a team that's going to run the football down your throat, not only with the running backs that Baltimore has, but also with the threat of Lamar Jackson and all those RPOs that they're going to run. That's definitely a concern. You got to worry about Derrick Henry running the ball out of the backfield. And then you've got Lamar Jackson's run threat. And if you're a run defense that just gave up 150 yards to J.K. Dobbins and the Chargers last week, that is definitely a major matchup concern that I have. So while the number points to me that there's value with the Raiders, especially with that defense, the run defense was somewhat, I did not expect it to be that bad last week against the Chargers. And that does concern me here against this Baltimore team. Craig, how do you see this one playing out? Raiders, Ravens.
Well, you got to look at it from both ways, right? I know you're not a big fan of the 8.5, but I don't see them not winning by at least 10 points. And the reason being is
probably a lot of what I said, right? That run defense and what Baltimore's going to do on offense, right?
And you got Derrick Henry now, right? So not only do you have Derrick Henry, but now you have the dual threat with Lamar Jackson. I don't understand. I mean, the crazy thing is, like Minshew, I just don't see him playing that well here. I mean, obviously he went 25 for 33 for 257, but I don't see that happening. I know the Ravens defense isn't what it used to be. We all talk about how they, their defense, they took pride in that. They're not the same, but I don't think, Minshew is getting it close to this team. And another thing that I think we're not taking lightly is they just played the Chiefs. We're talking about Super Bowl champions here. We're talking about a Chiefs defense that doesn't give up that many yards. And Lamar Jackson went for 122. I mean, he almost tripled Derrick Henry's, rushing yards with 46. Listen, Likely had 111 yards receiving. Bateman obviously out there, 2 catches for 53 yards. I don't know, man. I think this is a game for Ravens to not only make a statement in the loss after the Chiefs, but to say, hey, listen, like, we're not going anywhere, right? This is that we want to win this division this year. And I don't know. I feel like this is a statement game for them. They're at home. I think that, what is it? Minus 480. I'm not, obviously nobody's touching that. But the 8.5 might even go to 9.5. I might even put it at 9.5 just because I don't see them being a couple, maybe 14 points. I see them being over a couple touchdowns of this game. The Raiders, I mean, they disappoint. You know what I mean? It's almost like every year they disappoint. And I think the Ravens, this is a bad time to catch the Ravens, especially after last week with the touchdown that should have been a touchdown. They were a toe out, from sending the game into overtime. But if you had noticed, Harbaugh was going to go for 2. I don't know if you saw that. They were going to go for 2 and just go win that game against the Chiefs. They said, "Screw it, we're going to go for 2. We're
Yep.
going to try the game right here, right now." I like the Ravens here, and also I'm gonna definitely take. I think it's Lamar Jackson's over for rushing yards. 100%. He is going to tear up the Raiders defense. They don't know what to do for Henry and Lamar. Just that duo dynamic attack. I don't think they have an answer for that.
That's a great prop. I totally agree with it, 1,000%. And here's why: the run defense obviously is the concern of the Raiders coming out of that Chargers game. But even if the run defense is better, the one thing the Baltimore Ravens have still questions about is their offensive line. I said that going into the 3 new starters. I don't think their offensive line is as good this year, Baltimore. Maybe it will be in time. And, they have Stanley at the left tackle spot, Linderbaum, the center, but everyone else is new on that Baltimore offensive line. That's the one area where they're going to be challenged here by Las Vegas, because the pass rush is real for Las Vegas, led by Max Crosby. So that offensive line is going to have to hold up for Baltimore in this game against him and that pass rush, which means, and what that means for your prop, Craig, for Lamar over rushing yards, is it means he's going to get flushed out of the pocket, because is that O-line going to be able to keep that pass rush and Crosby off the quarterback? I'm not so sure about that. So if he's flushed out of the pocket, what's he going to do? Oh, yeah, take off and run. It's exactly what he's going to do. So even if the run defense is better, Craig, for the Raiders, the pass rush is going to, I think, get home a few times against that still makeshift Baltimore offensive line with 3 new starters on it this year, that it'll force Lamar to have to take off and run with it, which is a good thing for the prop that you like.
I agree. I like it a lot. I'm not going to lie. You can't expect them to win by 10. I just don't see this being a very close game. I just don't. I see the Ravens taking advantage early, and then the Raiders are away. Mentally, I can't sit there and just look at the Raiders and be like, you know what, this is going to be a close game. I don't see this being a 7-point game. I see it being at least 10-14.
Yeah, it's and by the way, Antonio Pierce, who did a great job last year, really rallied the troops, right? They were down and out, and I think they were fed up with the way it went with Josh McDaniels. And he's just the kind of coach that players want to play for. Intense, passionate, cares about the players, all that. And they rallied around Antonio Pierce, had a great finish to the season. But he's a work in progress as a full-time head coach. You can't be punting 4th and 1, down by 7 points there with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter in Chargers territory at the 43, whatever it was. That was terrible, awful. And his justification, there is no justification. His attempt to justify it, Antonio Pierce, after the game was totally absurd. Yeah, and that's unfortunate. That's the first time I can say, you know what, he looked like a coach over his head a little bit. Now, I can't rush to conclusions because, look, they did play great, but you can tell now there's a lot more pressure on Antonio Pierce this year. Now you're in you're the permanent head coach. You're there for the full season. You got to make tough decisions. But he was coaching that game last week like it was fucking 1982, and we're going to punt on 4th and 1, like we did 40 years ago. You can't do that anymore at this day and age when you're down by 7, 6 minutes to go. And almost like karma, you knew he was going to pay the price for that decision, punting on 4th and 1 in Chargers territory, down by a touchdown. What happened after that? Oh, yeah, J.K. Dobbins busts one. And Chargers put the game out of reach. So there you go. Came back to bite him. Just can't do that. You got to go for it there.
You have to go for it. You have to.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, we go to the Los Angeles. Speaking of the Chargers, the team the Raiders lost to last week, here they are now. The next game on this slate, L.A. Chargers, Carolina Panthers. Chargers 6-point road favorites, 39 the total in this game. So when I have one of the worst calls and worst bets I've ever made in week 1 of an NFL season, like I did last week with Carolina, the one thing I make sure I do the next week is that I'm not betting that team again when I'm that wrong about them and they are that bad on the football field. And that's the case, I think, for me here. But it's also when I'm way off on a team, I'm more likely going to pass the game the next week. Where I don't necessarily what I saw last week from Carolina was beyond bad. That was the New Orleans Saints, who to me still aren't that particularly good. Basically dummying you, embarrassing you, and basically just destroying you on both sides of the football for 4 quarters. That's what was so alarming about that performance last week by the Carolina Panthers against the New Orleans Saints. That wasn't the Chiefs beating you by that kind of margin, or the Ravens, or the 49ers. That was the New Orleans freaking Saints doing that. And gosh, that is alarm bells like crazy went off in my mind, saying maybe this team is going to be just bottom feeder, bottom worst team in the NFL again this year. I mean, 47-10, really? Against the New Orleans Saints? You allowed Derek Carr to have 4 incomplete passes on 23 pass attempts in that game. Bryce Young was a turnover machine again, 2 interceptions, sub 50% completions, 13 for 30. No run game to speak of whatsoever. Chuba Hubbard, 14 rushing yards on 6 carries. Miles Sanders, 22 rushing yards on 5 carries. Just brutal. I mean, they were just wiped out, destroyed, devoured, annihilated on both sides of the football. The Carolina Panthers. I can't touch them this week. No way. But really running to lay 6 with the Los Angeles Chargers on the road? When's the last time the Chargers as a 6-point road favorite has been a good bet? I can't remember the last time it's been a good bet at all. And look, a lot of good signs last week, like the new run-first approach, which you knew you were going to get from Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh wants to run the football, and we saw that last week with Dobbins and with Gus Edwards. Take some pressure off Justin Herbert. The offensive line is better this year for the Chargers. So being able to run the ball more should benefit the offense. The offensive line should be able to run block at a pretty good level. And we know this Carolina defense was just horrendous last week against the Saints. And another thing, too, with that performance, Alvin Kamara got going. The run game with Jamal Williams, too, and even Taysom Hill got involved. So it will be a challenge here for Carolina's defense. But the one thing I'm not ready to do is ask the Chargers to win by a touchdown or more on the road. I'm just not there yet, even though Carolina was abysmal last week. And the one thing, too, in the back of your mind, for as bad as Carolina is, it was one game, it was 1 week. I still would like to see 2-3 more games of something like that before I'm ready to 100% declare Carolina the worst team in the NFL. And the one thing you'll get here is they are home. There is pride. They know they got absolutely embarrassed 47-10 last week in New Orleans. You got to believe there's intensity, focus, and a real desire to make amends here on Sunday afternoon in their home opener. So this is just one of those I'm going to sit back and watch type of games. I cannot, in good conscience, after having really liking Carolina last week and seeing them play like that, come back and bet them this week. But at the same time, laying almost a touchdown with the Chargers as a road favorite, that feels like a hell no to me. This is a team that historically, now I know it was Staley, it was Lynn, it was some horrible coaches, but as a road favorite in this price range, the Chargers have been a horrific bet against the spread over the years. So pass for me. The total's been hit down. I could see it. Maybe this game stays under the total. Remember, Chargers are more of an under team this year. Defense is capable. They're running the football a lot more, taking more time off the clock. So I understand why there's people liking the under here in this game. Craig, what do you think here? Chargers, Panthers.
I mean, I'm with you, man. I can't touch this game, but you don't know what you're going to get from the Panthers. Obviously, yeah, they're at home. Maybe they play a little bit better with the home crowd behind them. But Chargers on the road here, like you said, it's 5.5 right now at 115. I just can't, even the under, because you never know. Like, if the Panthers could go off a little bit, given they are at home. Maybe the Chargers make it a good game by scoring points. I just can't. There's too many variables here to really pick one or the other. I'm also not touching this game. I really don't have much to say about it. I mean, the Chargers have better coaching. At the end of the day, I always go with better coaching. There's no doubt in my mind that the Chargers win this game, but by how much? At the end of the day, it's like, you are playing on the road. How are the Chargers on the road this year? We don't really know. So it's too many variables, like I said, to really judge what's going on with this game. If you want to, kind of tease it, at -2.5 for the Chargers. I mean, that's not terrible. I think it's at -200 right now. I mean, the only way I would do it is putting it in a parlay, but other than that, I'm not. I mean, there's no reason to touch this game.
All right, New Orleans Saints, Dallas Cowboys. We've got Dallas 6-point home favorites, 46.5 the total. Battle of 1-0 teams. Both of these teams look very impressive, but as we just talked about with Carolina, that was a lot of ineptitude by the Carolina Panthers. So just how good were the New Orleans Saints last week? I don't know. I've got to see more. I did not have a high opinion of New Orleans coming into the season. I'm not a big Derek Carr fan. Check down Charlie. He did have the one big pass play early in the game. I give him credit, but it was pretty wretched defense from the Carolina Panthers. Like I said, I've just got to see more here from this New Orleans team. Again, regarding their offense, it's going to be up against it here against this Dallas defense, which I thought played a hell of a game against Cleveland. The Dallas defense. Micah Parsons went nuts. He had a huge day. The pass rush was great. And I think still the Saints have, a very below average offensive line. I do. I just don't think they're off. Remember Ryan Ramczyk, the right tackle, and they've lost a lot of good O linemen over the years. This New Orleans team. And of course, the Carolina Panthers, don't forget, Carolina lost Brian Burns, one of their best pass rushers. They had zero pass rush on Derek Carr. He had all day to throw that football. He's not going to have that against Dallas.
No.
Not as much at all. The edge rushers with Parsons, don't forget about Lawrence, DeMarcus Lawrence, and what he's capable of as well. I think it's going to be a much bigger challenge for that. I still think that Saints offensive line was great last week for the Saints, but how much of it was zero pass rushers, zero impact from the Carolina defensive line? I think that was a big part of it. That's not going to be the case here against the Dallas Cowboys. Meanwhile, on the flip side, Dallas, their own offensive line has big-time question marks too. The question is the New Orleans defensive line going to be able to take advantage of that? Because I don't think their defensive line necessarily is nearly as good. And a lot of last week's performance was, Carolina did not have a ton of playmakers. Bryce Young's mistake-prone. A lot of that played into how good New Orleans played defensively last week. I still don't think their defensive line's all that great. And outside of Lattimore, I don't love their secondary either. They better hope Lattimore stays healthy, the Saints, because after that, I think their secondary's got big-time question marks. You're going from playing a team that was one of the worst teams in the NFL last year at home to now going on the road, playing a Dallas team that obviously, look, Dallas has got flaws too, but they are obviously leaps and bounds ahead of the opponent they played last week, Carolina. I like Dallas here. I like them even more in a teaser, as a teaser leg option. You can get them down to a pick 'em on a 6-point teaser. You can put them with another good teaser option this week. But Dallas in a teaser. I'll lay the 6-2 with Dallas, but I like them even more in a teaser just to get the straight-up win. This total is interesting because I kind of lean over just because, look, the one thing I will say about the Saints offense, and here's the thing with Derek Carr. I think, he can move the ball a little bit. They'll put up some points, but he's also going to maybe give some points to Dallas. He's very capable of doing that with maybe an interception or a pick six as well. And the one thing and a really good positive I'll say about New Orleans, especially on offense, Craig, last week, I think there's really good potential for this offensive coordinator they brought in, Clint Kubiak. He's the new offensive coordinator, son of Gary Kubiak, who coached in the league many years, Texans and Broncos. This guy comes from the Mike Shanahan coaching tree. He was a passing game coordinator with the 49ers last year. So you knew he learned from one of the best in Kyle Shanahan. I liked a lot of the creativity, diversity, changing formations, end arounds, jet sweeps, short passes, long, deep passes, running the ball. He was really mixing it up with the play calling last week in his debut as an offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints. I was very impressed with Clint Kubiak, and that's kind of why I think maybe he can scheme the Saints to some success offensively here against Dallas. Meanwhile, I think Dallas, look, their offense was the shaky part against Cleveland because that was the area where there was was their defense dominating against Cleveland. Their offense still needs to improve, but I think New Orleans defense will be a lot easier at home to deal with than Cleveland's defense on the road. So I still lean over the total here at 46.5. Craig, what do you like here? New Orleans, Dallas.
I mean, if you don't want to take too much of a risk and you want to go a different way other than the total, I mean, you could look at the total in the over for the Cowboys, which is
their
a
team total, right
now.
Yeah.
3 touchdowns, 2 field goals by Brandon Aubrey. That doesn't sound very bad. You know what I mean? That's 27 points. You're taking the over right there. 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals. Like, Great kicker. Going into this game, I just feel like that's more of a steal for me, at least, than it is to take the over because, you know, what if the Saints don't score? They're not going up against the same defense as they are by far. I think Mike might even get 2 sacks. This is a tough game. This is a very tough game for the Saints. This is one of those games. They're looking at week 1, right? We're like, oh my God, 47 points. They're good. Like, Saints are for real.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't trust Derek Carr as much as I can throw him. And I'm pretty strong, but I can't throw him that far. So for that being said, I don't mind the -6.5 either here, but I'm definitely taking the over in total points for the Cowboys for sure.
All right, so it sounds like Craig likes Dallas, but the best approach he likes with Dallas is the team total to go over with the Saints and the Cowboys there in that one. All right, next up, Tampa Bay, Detroit. We've got the Lions, 7.5-point home favorites, 51 the total. So I watched a lot of Tampa Bay, Washington. I split in that game. I had a piece of Washington, obviously wrong side, but the bigger bet I had was the over, and it cashed largely because of Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers offense, which was excellent. And in that game, I come out of that game and the defense was good. It was solid. There were a couple plays Jaden Daniels and the Commanders made, but I thought the defense played pretty well for Tampa Bay. The bottom line is, I think of all the teams in week 2 from a point spread standpoint with where they're being priced, you can make a case Tampa Bay is the most disrespected team right now this week in the NFL. Like, they're getting a full touchdown and the hook here in this game against Detroit. And this is a playoff team last year. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And a lot of people, almost the consensus was, well, Tampa Bay's not going to do that this year. They're going to decline. They're going to fall backward. Well, it didn't look like that last week. So to me, you're getting great value in this number with Tampa Bay. And you can't love this spot for Detroit. You're coming off a barn burner, Sunday Night Football, home opener, Matt Stafford back in town, the LA Rams. You got to go to overtime to win that game. And you got to ramp things up mentally, emotionally, all over again here for this game against Tampa Bay. Not easy. And you're asking Detroit to not only win this game against a competent opponent, you're asking them to win by almost double digits. That's asking a lot, in my opinion. Here's the one thing that is making me hesitate, though, on taking Tampa Bay. They are absolutely decimated in the secondary right now with injuries. Last week, there's multiple injuries in the secondary, and there's a chance that they could be down not just 2 start corners, but maybe 2 corners and a safety here in this game. It's not pretty at all. You're looking at some major concerns here. When you're talking Antoine Winfield, you're talking Zion McCollum, you're talking about Josh Hayes. Remember, don't forget, you no longer have Carlton Davis either here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You ended up letting him go in the offseason. So all of a sudden, you've got major cluster injury concerns. And by the way, Carlton Davis just happens to play for the team that the Bucs will be playing against here, the Detroit Lions. So the big concerns in the secondary. And when you're facing Jared Goff and you're facing Amon-Ra St. Brown, who actually had a very quiet game against the Rams. I don't know if he's going to have a quiet game. If you want a player prop for this game, take over receiving yards and maybe receptions for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know the Rams did a good job keeping him under wraps, but they are ravaged, cluster injuries in the secondary, Tampa Bay. This could be the game that Amon-Ra St. Brown gets going again for the Lions. Not to mention the emergence of the product from Alabama, Jameson Williams, who certainly looked the part last week against the Rams of a guy that's ready to become the legit number 2 receiving option behind St. Brown in this Lions offense. He had a tremendous game last week. That's the only concern I have. And I would still maybe take at least a small bet on Tampa Bay at +7.5, because I think this is still a competitive game. I am worried about the secondary, though. But I think Tampa can move the ball on Detroit. Detroit's defense is better, but I liked what I saw from Baker last week against Washington. Detroit did upgrade their secondary. Yes, the pass rush is going to be formidable, without a doubt. Up front, they're very solid. But I think both teams can have offensive success. I'm still concerned, Craig, about Tampa's defense. Like I said, it's not just the secondary. I think their pass rush is a little suspect. Washington doesn't have the greatest offensive line that they played last week. This week, they're playing against, in my opinion, Craig, it's not even a question, a top 3 offensive line in the NFL, minimum, Detroit. You could even make a case they're 1 or 2. They're that good with Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker, one of the best tackle combos in the NFL. Frank Ragnow, Pro Bowl center. They are loaded on the offensive line, and I think they're going to be a load to deal with for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensive front. So I like points in this game. No weather issues. I know it's a high total, 51, but with those secondary injuries for Tampa, I think it goes over the total. And even with those concerns, I still lean Tampa. I think nobody talks about Tampa. They're in a small market. They're not expected to be, a contender. These are the teams you make money with in the NFL. Those teams that fly under the radar, like a Tampa Bay. So Bucks and over for me. What do you like here, Craig?
I'm actually gonna agree with you. I think this is gonna be kind of like a gunslinger shootout type of game with both quarterbacks and both receiving cores too. I mean, they both have good receiver core. More Laporta on the side. I would go over here with Laporta's yards and possibly catches as well. Just given the fact that having that over the middle and over the top is going to be crucial for the Lions moving forward in this game. End zone, I would actually have Laporta for a touchdown as well. An anytime touchdown, that is. I just feel like they can exploit the Bucs defense a bit more going forward with the receiving. I don't see St. Brown having such a minimal game like he had last game against the Rams. He had three catches for 13 yards. I don't see that happening again. And then obviously Laporta with 4 catches and 45 yards. I just see both of those guys' numbers going up given the defense. The Rams defense is nothing to sneeze at. Obviously, they're not what they used to be, losing Aaron Donald. But I just don't feel like that the Bucs have the firepower to withstand an entire game to, obviously defeat the Lions. But the over I would rather take here than the line. But that's just me. I would definitely agree with you. I think, maybe a 56, 58 point game. Obviously I'm a kicker. I love that aspect of it. Both decent kickers on each side. Jake Bates on the other side coming from the UFL. I like that aspect of it too. I might take the over for him and field goals made and points as well. So just a few different things, coming out of this line and these props and whatnot. But, it's hard to take the Lions at 7.5. I don't.
Not to mention this playoff rematch, and Tampa Bay lost to Detroit in the playoffs last year, and they're going to want a little redemption here in this game. I just think at 7.5, there's value on Tampa Bay, even with
100%.
Concerns with the secondary.
I do like the over. I do like the over here though at 51.
Yep, no doubt. All right, Colts and Packers. Indianapolis 3-point road favorites at Lambeau. 41 the total in this game. I came away impressed with Indy, even in a tough, hard-fought, close loss with Houston last week. I thought they played well. I thought defensively there's issues. Against the run there's issues. C.J. Stroud at times carved them through the air. That's a work in progress. I don't love that Colts defense. But obviously they catch a big break here because they will not see Jordan Love. They will see instead Malik Willis, who they just got from Tennessee in a trade right before the end of training camp, end of the preseason. And he will make his first start for the Packers here in this game, who are coming off not only the trip to Brazil, Sao Paulo, but coming off a 34-29 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles in that game. Like I said, I came away impressed with Indy, even in a losing cause, 29-27 to Houston. I thought their defense still needs to improve. They gave up 159 rushing yards to Joe Mixon, so that does concern me here when you face the Green Bay Packers, who have Josh Jacobs now as their running. This could be a Josh Jacobs over rushing yards. That's probably a really good prop when you think of it. Josh Jacobs over rush attempts and or rush yards, because they're going to run the football a lot. They're going to take pressure off Malik Willis. This was a bad run defense last week. Indy giving up 150 rushing yards to Joe Mixon of the Texans, 159 rushing yards. So you got to believe it's going to be Josh Jacobs early and often here for the Green Bay Packers. C.J. Stroud, though, was excellent in that game. The Colts, struggled defensively, but offensively, Anthony Richardson, 2 touchdowns, 212 yards, dynamic with his legs, 56 rushing yards, and you pair that with Jonathan Taylor, finally a healthy Jonathan Taylor for the Indianapolis Colts. There's room for hope offensively here for the Indianapolis Colts. But then you look, yes, defensively they struggled last week. And when they play really good offenses, Craig, that's still the concern for me is going to be their defense. But is this going to be a really good offense this week for Green Bay with Malik Willis at quarterback? Here's my opinion on Malik Willis. There is nothing I saw at any point when he started games in the regular season against Tennessee that tells me he's a number one quarterback or capable of being a starting quarterback caliber player in this league. Not at all. I thought he looked over his head, is god-awful with accuracy and efficiency throwing the football. That's a huge concern. He's not accurate with the ball. He throws a lot of turnover-worthy passes, and that's what you don't want to see. The bottom line is, I know there's been a big adjustment with no Jordan Love because Green Bay was a 5-point home favorite prior to last week, and now they're a 3-point home underdog. That being said, for me, it's still Colts or nothing. I was impressed with the Colts last week, and I do not, flat out, do not trust Malik Willis. I got to see more because I haven't seen anything good enough from him that tells me I'm ready to back him. What do you think here, Craig? Colts, Packers?
This is tough because it's always the worst losing your starting quarterback after week one when you're trying to develop some consistency in your offense. You have to think about it now. This is going to be a whole new offense. They have to cater around the quarterback now, and this is a quarterback that is obviously new to this whole scenario. So
yeah, you can't have him chucking it 30, 40 times like you would Jordan Love, right?
No. This is honestly, if there's ever a game that's an easy pick, this would be it. I don't think the home field. The points here is only because they have home field, or it would be way worse, right? It would be at least 7, probably. You think at least 7.
If Love was healthy, it would have been at least -5, -6. Green Bay. Yep.
Yeah. Yes. I would agree. So I mean, this is bad. This is bad for the Packers, and it's unfortunate that something like this had to happen. Now, good thing, prayers up to Jordan Love. Hopefully, he has a healthy recovery. But this is detrimental to their offense and their team this early in the season. I just don't see. I don't see the Colts. I think it's still going to be a close game. Green Bay has always been a good team, obviously at home. I think it'll be close. I just don't. I don't see the Packers having any chance of winning this game and putting points on the board. The total's at 41 for a reason. You know what I mean? Vegas isn't stupid. But I would lean under here. I would lean under, and I would probably take the Colts at -2.5.
All right. Yeah. I mean, for me, I've got to see it from Malik Willis first. Okay. I got to see him play well. And I have not seen enough of that. I think, there'd be games with Tennessee. He threw 6 for 21 in a game with his passing stats. I'm like, that's horrible.
Yeah.
But by the way, Indianapolis, for as bad as their run defense is, they're going to load the box. They're going to try to stop Jacobs. They're going to try to force Malik Willis to throw the football to beat him. That's going to be the game plan. So, like I said, I'm going to need to see it from Malik Willis before I'm on board. All right, next up, we've got Cleveland and Jacksonville. Jags 3-point home favorites, 41.5 the total. So of all the teams I downgraded in week one, I had to downgrade Carolina, obviously. I had to downgrade Denver a little bit because Bo Nix struggled so much. I had to downgrade Atlanta. They didn't look good at all, especially on offense against Pittsburgh. Of all the teams I downgraded, right there is the team maybe I downgraded one of the most. It was Cleveland. I mean, that was horrible last week from them against the Dallas Cowboys, especially on offense. And I know they've got 2 starting tackles out, and that's something you want to watch for here. Do they get Wills and do they get Jack Conklin, the left and the right tackle, back from injury? If they do, that's significant. But if they don't, that's a big problem moving forward. If they don't have either of those guys on the field, then all of a sudden you got to worry about Josh Hines-Allen. He's got the hyphenated name now. And, of course, Trayvon Walker as the pass rushers for Jacksonville that can do some significant damage. So, it's one of those deals where this is definitely a pass rush that can tee off on a team that might be missing their 2 tackles, just like Dallas did last week. And if you're teeing off on Deshaun Watson, that means he's going to make mistakes because that's where he's at right now. This is a guy that is, to me, I saw enough last week. I'm ready to say it. I think it's over for Deshaun as any kind of legit starting big time quarterback in the NFL. Just about. That was terrible. That was awful. He's not reading the defense as well. He's throwing into coverage, turnover worthy plays. I think I read that he had 6 of them in that game. And of course, he got picked off multiple times. It was just a dreadful performance from the quarterback spot. Now, again, it's exacerbated by the offensive line injuries, but still, I mean, it's just not good from the Cleveland offense. And that was Cleveland at home. Cleveland on the road last year, it was a nightmare. You know, their offense didn't perform as well, whether it was Watson, whether it was Flacco, and their defense last year was horrendous on the road compared to at home. And so now they're going on the road. They had one of the biggest home road splits, Craig, last year with their defense. At home, Cleveland's defense looked lights out, juggernaut. And then on the road, they're getting lit up, but 28, 35 points they're giving up on the road on a routine basis. Now they're on the road this week. That's concerning. Jacksonville, look, they had that game and they let it slip through their fingers. They're about to go up 24-7 on the Miami Dolphins with a Travis Etienne touchdown run. He fumbles at the goal line. Miami recovers. Next thing you know, it stays 17-7. They go down the field quickly with Hill and score a touchdown at 17-14. It goes from 24-7 Jacksonville, possibly, to 17-14 Jacksonville in the blink of an eye, just off that fumble. So Jacksonville probably should have won that game. I'm still concerned about Trevor Lawrence, though, in the offense. Didn't look great against Miami, and there's still some concerns I have for that group. I mean, they're just not finishing drives. They're stalling. They're not exactly. Their pass protection's been spotty at times, and that's concerning here because the one thing about Cleveland, that the strength of their defense is probably their front. Now, again, they also have Denzel Ward banged up in the secondary, Cleveland, so that could be a concern. But I liked enough of what I saw from Jacksonville against a good Miami team on the road. The chance to go up 24-7. They fumbled. If they go up, they win this game, and maybe they're a bigger favorite here in this game against Cleveland. So at -3, I like Jacksonville here. And I just don't like what I saw at all from the Cleveland Browns last week. And I'm not backing Deshaun Watson on the road in a price range where he's almost got to win the game to cover the number. I'm not doing that. What do you think here, Craig? Cleveland, Jacksonville.
Well, what we didn't mention yet was the mental part of Deshaun Watson right now. He just lost his father, I think, less than a week ago. I don't think we mentioned that at all.
Did that? I didn't never even heard that. Wow.
Yeah,
How did I not hear that? Wow.
Yeah, and then he also lost a good friend of his as well. In fact, I think 3 or 4 days ago. 2 people, obviously, that were close to him. Obviously, his father being the most important.
Yep.
That's a lot to handle. Obviously, as a quarterback in the NFL, you already have enough spotlight on you as it is already. But losing your father within the last week can be tough, and that could be really detrimental to your psyche going into the game. I don't know if he's all there. I really don't, and obviously, playing a team like the Cowboys is tough, but now you're on the road. Tough game against the Jags. They're playing well. Obviously, they had one stolen from them last week. I don't think he's all there. I really don't. I think what you were alluding to was the fact that he could possibly be done as a starter. I don't know if I would go that far yet, but just given everything that's gone on behind, and let's take the off the field stuff, right? For instance, there's just so much going on with Watson that I think it's too much to handle for him right now. Not just the passing of his father, but a good friend of his, the legal stuff, that's going on with the allegations and everything like that. It's a lot, man. I think it's too much. But to get back to the football side of it, given the game, I think the Jags are at -164 right now on the money line. But if you think about it, the over is 5-0 in the Browns' last 5 games. Just throwing that out there. Jags are 4-1 against the spread. Their last 5 games versus the Browns. This is a tough. It's going to be a tough game for me to pick. I didn't think it was that tough, based on Deshaun Watson's psyche. His mental health right now is definitely struggling. And there's no way I think he's going to be able to go in the Jaguars away game, go in there and possibly win this for them. I just don't see it really happening, especially the way that they played last week. Yes, Cowboys, Jags, where do they rank? Obviously, I would have the Cowboys up there a little bit more, but I think the Jaguars are pissed. I think I think they're out for blood this game. I think they need a win, obviously, to stay relevant. What better to do it at home against the Browns? So I like the -3. I mean, if you want to tease that, you go to -2.5 if you really want to. But I also like the over as well. So with that being said, thoughts and prayers out to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, no doubt. If you're dealing with that, my goodness, his dad and his friend, my gosh, that's a lot to deal with. Cleveland was an over team on the road. I remember last year. Cleveland, again, the defense wasn't any good on the road last year. And you're right, they've gone over, believe it or not, 7-1, 8-1 in their last 9 games to the over, dating back to last year. The Cleveland Browns. So, and all the money's come in on the under all week, 44.5, all the way down to 41.5 in this game. So maybe the value is the other way now, 41.5 for maybe the over here, given that Cleveland over trend. All right, 49ers Vikings. San Francisco 5.5-point road favorites, 45.5 the total. Tricky spot for San Francisco. I actually kind of lean Minnesota here a little bit. Do I love it? No, but I lean Minnesota here. I was impressed. I know it was the Giants. Okay, people are going to say it's the Giants. Now you're playing San Francisco. Okay, but for Sam Darnold to go on the road and hit 12-12 to start the game, you got to give him credit for that. You do. And he's going to have an axe to grind here. This was the team he used to be with, San Francisco. And, you always want to play well against one of your former teams. There's no question about it. So I was impressed. I thought Darnold played a hell of a game. Now, again, you're playing against a taller opponent, tougher opponent here, without a doubt. But I just get concerns a little bit with San Francisco. Played a hell of a game against the Jets, even without Christian McCaffrey, even trying to work Ayuk and Trent Williams back into the rotation with very little to no preseason and training camp. But they have been, at times, San Francisco, a little wobbly in these Midwest road trip games. You know what I mean? I remember the Cleveland game last year, and there's been some games where they've made the trip to the East or the Midwest, and they've been bad point spread teams in some of these games. And so I kind of lean Minnesota. It's not a strong opinion of mine, but I'd be leery of this spot a little bit for San Francisco. Monday night, traveling on a short week for an early start, Sunday, 10 a.m. on the body clock, Pacific time for San Francisco. This could be a ball. This could be a barn. This could be a game that's going to be an effort for San Francisco to win this game. Plus, didn't these teams just play each other recently? I do remember these teams. Yeah, it was last year. Minnesota in this building won 22-17 against the San Francisco 49ers. Minnesota, in fact, in Minnesota, they're 4-0. The last 3-1 straight, 3-1 against the spread, 4-0 straight up. Minnesota, the last 4 times they've hosted San Francisco, including that win last year. Vikings beat them outright as 6.5-point underdogs, 22-17. Purdy didn't have a great game, and that was with McCaffrey. And yes, that was with Kirk Cousins, who's now gone for Minnesota at quarterback, but this has that feel to it. This is a dangerous game. It may not be as easy as some people think for the Niners, even how they looked great last week against the Jets. So I'm leaning Vikings as a home dog. Hell, they won outright in this spot last year against San Francisco. What do you think here, Craig?
Do we know if McCaffrey's playing? I think that's the biggest thing in my mind.
Apparently, it's up in the air, and the last I checked, they might actually hold him out one more week.
That's the thing.
Yep.
Achilles injuries are no joke.
Yep.
Obviously, Aaron Rodgers can attest to that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do sideline him one more game. Vikings, we have a picture now, right? And it's painted that the Vikings are a really good team. But what else has Sam Darnold showed us other than that last game against a team that I would never put money on, which is the New York Giants?
It is a pretty wretched secondary the Giants have, I will say.
Yeah, that. I mean, just look at the quarterback play too. I mean, Daniel Jones, I've never trusted him ever. He got paid all this money and this huge contract for what? Like, I didn't really know what he's.
I'd actually lean over in this game too, because San Francisco could move. I'm still not. The one thing I'll say, Craig, I'm not sold on Minnesota's defense still. I know last week it was phenomenal, the secondary in particular, but I am sold on their. And Sam Darnold's got the benefit of incredible receivers. When you're talking Justin Jefferson and of course Jordan Addison. Those are excellent receivers. They can carry a mediocre quarterback because they're so good. Meanwhile, they've also got Aaron Jones now, the former Packer, as their new running back. So I think offensively they could be solid, Minnesota. But you're right, they will be tested more here.
I wouldn't doubt. I would look at Brock Purdy's over in passing yards here, because don't think Minnesota's going to load the box. Seeing all that film from that rushing game last week, I would not be surprised that Brock throws the ball for at least 250 plus this game. Given the fact that they are going to want to load the box, they don't want to. I mean, just look at the way the offensive line dismantled the Jets' defensive line last game. It was unreal. It was unreal. I mean,
and if they did that to the Jets, they could do it here. Yep.
So I would look for Minnesota to have some type of game plan to not, being allowed over 6 yards of rush against their defensive line. Look the linebackers to load the box. I just I like Purdy's over here on his passing yards. I just 5.5 for Minnesota. I don't see 49ers going down at all. I only see them going up. Take that momentum. I understand it's at Minnesota. I still like the 49ers. I don't know if I want to take the 5.5 just in case. The over here, I do like, 45.5. I think both of these teams are going to score. Does Sam Darnold really thrive, this game against the 49ers defense? I don't know. That's to be said. When the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, kind of getting shut out for the most part, other than that first drive that they had with the Breece Hall touchdown, but I just don't see them coming up with consistent drives throughout the game. I see them kind of stalling. Look for the kicker props in this game as well for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, that's this definitely I could see it with the Vikings, maybe that they settle for field goals a little bit. Like I said, though, situationally, and I know this is not the Giants. I 100% totally agree with that. But I'm telling you what, I can't get that game out of my mind. San Francisco was an excellent team last year, too. They go to Minnesota. It was actually, I think, a worse team last year than they are this year, perhaps. And they lost in Minnesota. Like, this was a trap for them last year in Minnesota. So, and coming off Monday night, short week, I could see San Fran by 3 or 4. They'll win, maybe, but 3 or 4, I could see it. So I'm definitely leaning home underdog here, and I lean over 45.5. I think we could see enough points still for that game to go up and over the number. All right, Seattle and New England. Seattle 3.5-point road favorites, 38.5 the total. Under for New England Patriots games until proven otherwise. And that was as easy as, and I'm not a huge under guy, but even I last week loved the Bengals Patriots under. I mean, New England's going to be a dead nuts under team. They've got all the makings of being an under team every week until something changes. And because their defense is no joke, this is a really good Patriots defense, possibly. Like, they were awesome against the Bengals. They made Joe Burrow look terrible. They made that whole Bengals offense look really bad. And you got to give the Patriots and Gerard Mayo and the coaching staff a lot of credit. They have a defense. Not so sure they have an offense, even though they did win and pull the upset last week against the Bengals. And look, believe it or not, the offense was actually a little bit better than I thought it would be with Jacoby Brissett. Ramondre Stevenson, the running back, had a good game running the ball and catching it. But they're still very much devoid of playmakers and game breakers and speed at the wide receiver position. They're still very much a run-heavy, churn the clock, dink and dunk, short to intermediate passing offense. I mean, all you need to see is 15 completions for 121 yards for Jacoby Brissett. So what is that as far as, what are you looking at? Barely 6 yards per completion in that. So, it's just 7. So, yeah, everything's short to intermediate. Run the football. Again, there's not a whole lot that you can hang your hat on as far as speed at the receiver spot. So they are going to be a methodical offense that probably settles for field goals a lot, and they did do that against Cincinnati. But their defense is quite solid, quite good even, New England. It's a perfect recipe for unders with a team like that. Meanwhile, Seattle, they didn't exactly light it up against Denver at home, even though they won. They got going in the second half, but in the first half, Geno and the offense was a mess. Against the Broncos. Now you got to go on the road and face probably, I would say, New England's defense is better than Denver's, at least on paper this year. So I don't know if they're going to move the football up and down the field against the Patriots. So for me, the clear lean is the clear bet for me is the under here Even though it's a low total, 38.5, I could see this being 20-16, 16-13, some kind of game like that all the way. Under for me. From a side perspective, look, it's one thing to take New England on the road getting more than a touchdown like last week. 3.5 only at home, and now you're asking them to like come damn close to winning the game. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't know if I'm rushing to lay it with Seattle and their offense on the road either, but I wouldn't want New England here. So it would be a mild lean to Seattle, but what I like most is the under here in this game. What do you think here, Craig? Seahawks, Patriots.
This is a tough one because you want to think that, the Seahawks can come in here and do some damage. But the Patriots, yes, the defense, and we discussed this before, of how the Patriots defense was the bright spot last year for them. It wasn't really the offense at all. The defense can make plays. They do have a solid defense that keeps them in games at times. I just feel like I'm gonna agree with you. I think the under here is the right play. The under is 7-1 in the Seahawks' last 8 road games, by the way. Just wanted to throw that little tidbit out there. They're also 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games versus the Patriots as well. So,
and the guy they hired as a head coach, Mike McDonald, pretty damn good defensive mind, as we saw in Baltimore. Yep.
Yes. No, I agree. Yeah, it's also crazy. The Patriots under is 7-1 in the last 8 times they've played NFC.
That's no
West
shock to me.
Opponents.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's the under here. It's an easy pick. I'm not touching anything else. I think the under here is the play. Patriots at home. That's Seattle. Both of these teams. I mean, these aren't powerhouse teams by any means. These are more the lower echelon of the teams in the league here. But, if there's anything I'm going to take, it's probably the under. Look for some kicker props as well in this game. Yep. There will be some field goals hit. That's more of, my type of betting toward this game. But if anything, I think the Patriots and the Seahawks go under.
I agree, and I love the look that you mentioned, Craig, and he's a kicker recommending kicking props. How about that? Couldn't have seen that coming. But no, I agree. Look, Jason Myers is a veteran kicker. He's been around forever for this Seattle Seahawks team. I think he's very capable of being able to get some, field goals here. And Seattle's probably going to have to settle for them as well. And meanwhile, for the New England Patriots, same thing. I think you're going to see them end up getting, a lot of field goals as well here in this game. So definitely a good field goal prop type of game for sure, both ways. All right, Jets, Titans. New York Jets, 3.5-point road favorites, 40.5 the total in this game. Very interesting. You talk about bad beats from a betting standpoint. If you had Tennessee, my condolences, man. They were up the whole game. They were covering the whole game. And then what? Block punt return for a touchdown, pick 6. And Chicago finds all these ways to score on defense and special teams. And they come back, not only win, but they cover the number without scoring an offensive touchdown in the game against Tennessee. That's brutal if you had the Titans last week. What it showed me, though, is the Titans might have a pretty decent defense this year. Like, they've made Caleb Williams look inept, in that game against the Bears last week, even though they lost. They should have covered that number. The defense played great. Now, the offense does have concerns. They don't have Derrick Henry anymore. Where's the run game going to come from? And, of course, Will Levis didn't have a good second half at all. Definitely looked like a second-year starter with the way he played in the second half for the Tennessee Titans. So that's concerning as well. So offensive concerns for Tennessee, without a doubt. But that defense looked really, really good. And we just saw the Jets offense, against San Francisco struggle to finish drives. And I don't think it's going to be easy on a short week traveling, much like we talked about with San Francisco, to go on the road, Music City here against I'm not comfortable yet laying 3.5 on the road with the New York Jets. Not after what I saw last week. I do lean Tennessee here a little bit. They were a good home dog, at least in the Mike Vrabel era. They were a very good home underdog. Will they be in the Callahan era as the head coach now? That remains to be seen, but I'm not comfortable laying more than a field goal with the Jets right now on the road. So I'd lean Tennessee, but I think this is another under as well. Total's been bet down. Jets are going to run the football with Breece Hall a lot of short to intermediate passes. We didn't see Aaron Rodgers really throw a bunch of deep balls. Everything was more short to intermediate, a lot of time off the clock. Meanwhile, the Jets defense, I know it was bad against San Francisco. Everyone's crowning this the best defense since the '85 Bears coming into the season, the Jets, and they got absolutely torn apart by San Francisco. I doubt the Tennessee Titans are going to have that same kind of offensive success here against this Jets defense this week. So the under and the move down on the total, Craig, makes a lot of sense to me in this game. What do you think here, Jets Titans?
Well, if we're looking at a standpoint, we're looking at it from a standpoint of props, if you will. Obviously, they like to go for the Jets standpoint. They like to go to Garrett Wilson. I mean, that is their guy. That's the main guy. That's always their first. That's literally always their first look, and then the check down, right? Lazard, you can't trust really. He drops. He has drops. And then what's the health of Mike Williams? It is Mike Williams, right?
We didn't even see him last week on the field against the Niners. Yeah,
he was on the field. He
briefly
just didn't get any targets. He didn't get any targets with that.
Yeah.
I mean, he is coming off ACL surgery.
Yes, being careful.
We all know.
Right.
So it's tough. Like, what are you doing? And then I don't even think Xavier Gibson had a catch. But I think he had one target at the end of the game with the backup quarterback in the game. So where's your receiving core? Who's he throwing the ball to other than Garrett Wilson? I mean, really. I mean, I think Conklin, the tight end, had 1-2 catches.
Yep.
It's not going to cut it, man. But
nope.
If you're looking at,
you got to spread it out more, 100%. Yeah.
Oh yeah. If you're looking at someone to get catches and rack up yards, it's Garrett Wilson. That is who they are looking for. That is the guy. So that would be, obviously catches and probably over in both yards and catches that I have. The Jets as a whole, I mean, yeah, they're at -4 right now, with the total being 40.5. It's hard to think that Aaron Rodgers is not going to put this team in a position now that they got a game under their belt. They're not playing, one of the best teams in the league. You know what I mean? I just feel like from a standpoint with the Titans and the Jets defense, how are they going to play? Like, how is this game going to come out? It's tough. It really is tough. Tennessee without an offensive touchdown last game. Like, what are we supposed to expect from their offense this game, given what the Jets, were put up against them last game? I don't know. That's to be told, but that's to be seen. But it's just, Aaron Rodgers to not have a 200-yard passing game is crazy to me. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, we get it.
Tennessee had one offensive touchdown, by the way, last week against Chicago. They had one. Okonkwo got one from Levis. Yeah.
In the entire game.
Yeah. It's the only offensive touchdown either team had in that Titans-Bears game. Yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough. 40.5, where they, 7 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns. I'm taking the over here. Given the defenses for each team, I think that the New York Jets defense was exploited last game for sure. Obviously, that's a much more higher powered offense. But here's the thing. We were talking about the backup running back. So it's like, how good is the offensive line with the 49ers?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what are we exactly looking at with the Titans? Are they going to be able to put up points this game? And I really feel like both of them going into, this next game with a game plan, I feel like there will be more points scored. I think the Titans offense maybe gets it together just a little bit more with the offensive touchdowns rather than just one. I think the Jets come back. I think they have a better game plan on offense. Obviously, Saleh's, more of a defense-minded guy, head coach, but I think the Jets have Aaron Rodgers is a competitor. When it comes down to it, he is a competitor. I think he's going to have more passing yards. I think they're going to have more points on the board. I like the over here.
Oh, wow. Disagreement. Yeah. I kind of like the other way, the under, after what I saw with these teams last week. But yeah, interesting. And it is a low total, 40.5. Actually, it's up to 41.5. That total's starting to move up. And I also adjusted the point spread here. It's up to 4. So the Jets have taken money just this morning, and the total as well back up to 41. So Jets and over, believe it or not, the last few hours has taken some money there. All right, this is the last of the early kickoffs on Sunday. Giants and Commanders. Washington 1.5-point home favorites, 43 the total in this game. I could only look Washington from a side perspective. I think there's a higher ceiling for them this year than the Giants. I know they lost badly to Tampa Bay. The defense got cooked, but shredded by Baker Mayfield. But now you're probably taking a step down in class. You're back home. I'm definitely interested in the Washington side, but even more than that, I like over the total here. 43. I cashed an over last week, Craig. It was on my short list with Washington, Tampa Bay. It was one of my favorite plays of the week. I think Washington's defense is still very questionable. Now, the question is, can Daniel Jones take advantage of it? Well, I think he'll do a better job of it this week against Washington's defense compared to Minnesota. I'm not saying they'll light up the scoreboard, but I think there's better in the Giants' offense and Daniel Jones than what we saw with the offensive-minded head coach and Brian Daboll. But I also think Washington moves the ball here. Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, and company. Brian Robinson running the ball. I thought they got against a Tampa Bay defense that, has some questions. First game too for Jaden Daniels. I think he'll be more comfortable and he'll be at home this time around. And the Giants defense got lit up by Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings on the road. So I think Washington gets going offensively and builds on the good second half they had against Tampa last week. So I like the Commanders. I like the over as well. What do you like?
Well, the Giants surprised me last week, in a bad way, because Daniel Jones,
they are worse than we thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't see him doing that bad. In his first week with that new contract. Everything looks great for him, but I mean, Giants at plus 124 right now on the money line. I don't know, man. This game. This is one of those games I don't touch, because the Giants are so unpredictable and so bad in so many ways, and the Commanders are almost the exact same thing. So it's like, what gives?
I just think they have higher upside at the quarterback spot with Daniels and I actually thought Washington could be better than the Giants this year in the division. So that's why I'm at less than a field goal. I'm going to make a case for Washington, but I like the over even more.
I mean, the Commanders have lost 6 straight games versus NFC East opponents.
And the Giants have owned them. Yes, the Giants have owned them. Yes.
So, if I were to take something, it would be the Giants. Obviously, you're getting plus money there. So I don't see that as a bad thing on the money line. Actually, they're minus 102 now. It's changed. So you pretty much you're getting even money for the money line with the Giants. I just don't. This is a tough one because both teams are bad. They're obviously going against each other. The Commanders have not showed me enough from last week, but then the Giants, they didn't either. So it's a toss-up at this point. If I had to pick it, I would pick the Giants money line just because of history.
All right, we move to the 4 p.m. Eastern, late Sunday afternoon start times and kickoffs. Rams and Cardinals, Arizona, 1-point home favorites, 48.5 the total in this game. Beware, before betting this game, Rams are decimated with injuries coming out of that Detroit loss. Puka Nacua on IR.
Out.
Multiple injuries on the offensive line. And one of the guys, Joe Noteboom, was taking the place of another guy on that offensive line, and he's out now too. So you got multiple injuries on the offensive line. Big-time concerns. Credit to Sean McVay, though, and the Rams. Even when they were losing bodies left and right on the offensive line, they somehow cobbled together the O-line third quarter, fourth quarter, overtime against Detroit and still moved the football, believe it or not. So give Sean McVay all the credit, trying to make a chicken salad out of chickens, whatever that term is. But, basically the Rams cobbled together an offensive line. They were still capable, and they might be capable even with a makeshift offensive line here to at least put up some points, because I think Arizona is a bottom 3, bottom 5 defense in the NFL. I just don't think they have no pass rush. I don't love their secondary. And I think Matt Stafford can make some plays even with a makeshift offensive line. But I think Arizona puts points on the board. I like what I saw from Kyler Murray, even in a loss to Buffalo. He moved the ball. He ran with the ball. He looked mobile again, fast. James Conner ran the ball well. They've got receivers now that Marvin Harrison Jr. is in the fold. They got some weapons to work with. And the Rams defense, as we saw against Detroit, still a little shaky. This is a game I like over. I want to take Arizona because they look good again. They could have won against Buffalo. I like a lot of the things I saw. I'm worried like crazy about all the injuries for the Rams. But it's also hard to overlook one thing about this game, Craig. Sean McVay has completely and utterly owned the Arizona Cardinals. Like, it has been one-sided, 8-2 straight up, 7-3 against the spread for the Rams head-to-head against the Cardinals. They won both meetings last year in blowout fashion for the first year that Jonathan Gannon was the head coach here in Arizona, first year against McVay, and McVay won that matchup in the 2 meetings by a combined score of 63-23. Yikes for Arizona in the 2 games against the Rams. That's the only thing keeping me off Arizona here in this game is that damning series history for Arizona against Sean McVay and the Rams. But I would not touch the Rams here. Tough spot on the road again and with a lot of injuries. So I'm probably only going to go with the over in this one. Lean Arizona, but likely only going to actually bet the over in this game. What do you think here, Craig? Rams, Cardinals.
So because of what you just said, and I'm glad you mentioned that he owns the Cardinals, I'm not going to touch that either. I would lean over here, but what I'm really looking at is Kyler Murray, right? What can Kyler Murray do? He's trying to do everything possible to get his team wins. So I would look for, he carried the ball 5 times for 57 yards last game against the Buffalo Bills defense, which I think personally is a little bit better than the Rams. But I would look for Kyler Murray's over in rushing yards this game.
I agree with that.
Without Aaron Donald there, I think he's gonna have to be forced out of the pocket a few times. Do not be surprised if Kyler Murray has 60, 70 yards rushing.
Yeah, and as we saw against Buffalo last week, looking to run with the football when he gets that chance. All right, Cincinnati and Kansas City. This will be the Jim Nantz, Tony Romo special on CBS in the late window on Sunday. We've got Kansas City, 5.5-point home favorites, 48 the total here in this game. Some of the starch taken out of this game by Cincinnati, losing as 8-point favorites at home against New England last week. People thought this would be 1-0 versus 1-0, battle of AFC contenders, but it's 0-1 Cincinnati now taking on 1-0 Kansas City. And look, the Bengals offense was bad. Joe Burrow was bad. The O-line was bad. New England just dominated them. Their D-line dominated Cincinnati's O-line. There's no question about that. Question is, do you have to ask yourself, is Cincinnati capable of better than that on offense? Yeah, they should be. But I'm also telling you this too. This Jamar Chase holdout, they missed that guy. He's a difference maker for the Bengals. And now they don't have Tyler Boyd anymore as well. He moved on. He was a very important receiver for the Bengals. So after T. Higgins, you have to ask yourself, especially with Jamar Chase still sitting out and holding out, what do they have at receiver, that they can rely on? I beg your pardon. He played last week, Jamar Chase.
He did. I was just about to tell you that. He did play.
He did. I beg your pardon. He did play last week. But he did play last week, 62 receiving. I forgot about that. The last minute, he said he's still going to play in spite of the contract impasse. Yeah, he had 62 receiving yards there in that game.
6 catches.
6 catches, 62 receiving yards. But, you've got concerns in terms of the depth of the receiving core a little bit. You're going to need, Gesicki and Hudson, the tight ends to step up. I do like that Oshivash kid. Andre Oshivash has really been a guy that's really opened eyes for Cincinnati. But, again, the O-line's got to play better than they did against New England. That was a big-time concern for the Bengals there against the Patriots, that O-line struggled. And you got to deal with Chris Jones and a pretty good Kansas City defensive front here in this game. That being said, Cincinnati's been a thorn in Kansas City's side. The Chiefs were take the win against Baltimore, 27-20. Kansas City, by the way, dating back to last year, they're now 7-0 straight up, 7-0 against the spread since New Year's Eve last year when they beat Cincinnati at home 25-17. That started a 7-game winning streak straight up and ATS, which is still ongoing through the playoffs, through the Super Bowl, and, of course, week 1 last week against Baltimore. So I'm not rushing to bet against Kansas City, but I'm not probably going to lay it with Kansas City either because I know this spot is triple circled on Cincinnati's schedule, playing this Chiefs team. And they're going to be ramped up after losing to New England last week. So I could still see this being a very close, very competitive game. I probably pass, mildest of leans to the Bengals, but probably going to end up being a pass here for me. What do you think here with this one, Craig? Bengals, Chiefs.
I like this game. I really like this game. I have the Chiefs at -5.5, and I have the total at being less than 48. I don't see the Bengals offense doing much more than last game. You now have a better defense you're going against with the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't see Joe Burrow being like, all of a sudden I'm just going to turn it on because we're playing the Chiefs. Listen, it's at the Chiefs too.
Yep.
It's at the Chiefs. I mean, if anything, and I know, hey, I'm biased. I see Evan McPherson having a great day. That's what I would do. If I was going to put anything on the Bengals, it would be McPherson with the over in points and field goals made. But I just don't see the Chiefs laying down to the Bengals. I see them making another statement game. Obviously the Bengals are not the Ravens. Let's be honest. Joe Burrow is not moving like Lamar Jackson. They're not going to give them as many, looks for a running quarterback, as the Ravens gave them. I just don't. They know what they get out of Joe Burrow, right? They know what they're going to go against them, right? So with the defense, Andy Reid, better coaching here. I like the coaching. I like the defense. I like the offense putting up some points here. I don't see the Bengals scoring. I don't know what it is right now for the Bengals, but I don't see them scoring over, 2 touchdowns. I don't. I see maybe a couple touchdowns or a touchdown and maybe 3-4 field goals. Maybe. And that's giving them maybe a little bit too much credit, at Arrowhead.
Good kickers too. Maybe a field goal prop game too. Evan McPherson for the Bengals, a really good kicker, and of course Harrison Butker for Kansas City.
I just, I see I like the under here, and I definitely like the Chiefs with the points. So, we'll see what happens. But
there's going to be times to bet against the Chiefs when they're laying like 12 or 13, and they will be at some point.
100%. But this is not game week 2. The way I saw the way they played against the Ravens, they've got time off. They've had time to see this game. They've had time to watch the film. They've got guys rested. I don't know. I really like the Chiefs in this game here.
And again, a team 7-0 straight up, 7-0 against the spread. Their last 7 games, Kansas City, since New Year's Eve last season. So, not in a rush to step in front of the Chiefs. All right, Pittsburgh and Denver. We got the Steelers 2.5-point road favorites, 36.5 the total. Anything less than 3, it's Pittsburgh or pass for me. Justin Fields is better than Russell Wilson. I upgrade Pittsburgh every time I see Justin Fields as the starter and not Russell Wilson, because I am in the camp that he is the better option, flat out, than Russell Wilson at this stage of his career. Now, I know they only had 6 field goals. Didn't score a touchdown last week, Pittsburgh, but I like the game Fields played. Played a mistake-free game. He moved the football. Yeah, you want to see more efficiency in the red zone, but I thought it was okay. And you can be that when you have a defense like Pittsburgh does. TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith are a wrecking crew, especially TJ Watt. In fact, I already saw enough, Craig, last week, right after that dominant performance by TJ Watt against Atlanta. I got down on TJ Watt to be Defensive Player of the Year. I had to bet it. I think he's got a great chance to win it if he stays healthy, plays 17 games, because he is making a case right now that he might be the most dominant defensive player in the league. He's been that special. You can't block him. You can try to double team him, and he still gets around you and gets into the quarterback's grill. I mean, he's just absolutely incredible. And good luck, Bo Nix, trying to deal with that. And this Denver offensive line, which is still, in my opinion, a bit of a work in progress. Bo Nix really had to scramble out of the pocket a lot. Seattle's defensive line really made life tough on Denver. And now you got Pittsburgh's defensive front coming to town. That could be tricky. I mean, I kind of lean under, too. I could see this being low scoring, but boy, 36.5. I just can't take an under that low when it's below the key number of 37 as well. But I think it probably will be a game where points are few and far between. But less than a field goal with Fields starting, I didn't see enough out of Bo Nix to trust him against a pass rush that's going to come at him like Pittsburgh's with what I saw from him against Seattle last week. So at 2.5 or better, it would be only Pittsburgh for me in this game. Craig, what do you think?
Are we set on is Russell Wilson? I know he's questionable, but is he playing?
No, it's Justin Fields again. I'm pretty sure they confirmed
100%. We know that for a fact right now.
We just I'm pretty sure they were going in that direction. I will get a confirmation on it for you. Let me just double check. Justin Fields. Mike Tomlin on Tuesday said Steelers are preparing as though Fields will start on Sunday.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Now, being a professional athlete for so long, I feel like they could be undermining that, right? The fact that Russell Wilson's not playing, and then all of a sudden, 2 days before the game, hey, Russell Wilson's going to be our starter for this game. So we don't really know that. That's why, again, like I said before, make sure you know who is going to be playing before you place these bets, guys.
Oh, always, of course, no doubt. Yep.
Because that's a big turnaround, And Justin Fields is no slouch. You know what I mean? He knows. Oh, we lose you? Oh.
No, I'm here. Continue. No.
There we go.
I'm responding to a call. So sometimes when I do that, I go off camera. Yeah, keep on going. I'm here.
No worries. Justin Fields is no slouch. So, this game, especially with Najee Harris, obviously being the running back, you got Pickens and Jefferson for the wide receiving core for the Steelers. I like it. I like it a lot. And obviously, you got that defense coming out there with TJ Watt. You got Benton out there. I think Ogunjobi is questionable. I'm not sure if he's out or not, if they've listed him yet as out, or he's just questionable at this point. But yeah, and then you got the Broncos at what, +2.5. I like the Steelers here. That to me, that's kind of a steal. -2.5 at the Broncos. This is a team, Mike Tomlin team that will be well disciplined on the defensive side of the ball. And I think their offense can score enough points. That total is really weird. 36.5. That seems too low and too good to be true to want to take an under. Do you lean over? Yeah, just because it's the NFL. You know what I mean? Points will be scored, but it's too questionable. Why is it that low? Obviously, with the quarterback play from both teams, you never know. You know what I mean? So for them to put up drives and put up points on the board is tough. But for 36.5 total, I'm not going near that. But I do like the Steelers here at -2.5.
And by the way, the Denver run defense is a concern. We saw what Kenneth Walker did for Seattle against them last week. So I think this is a good prop game for the running backs, potentially for Pittsburgh. Just like as I cashed an easy one with Kenneth Walker over rushing yards, I would look at some kind of Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren. Predominantly, Najee Harris is going to get the majority of the carries. Maybe look at those running back or rushing props for Najee this week, because I think he's going to have some success against this suspect Denver run defense. By the way, I often said over the years, Mike Tomlin's a great underdog. We saw it last week. Underdog, he wins outright. The Steelers do against Atlanta. He's not so good as a favorite, especially a road favorite, but it's usually a bigger road favorite where he's an issue. As a favorite of more than a field goal, 63-75 against the spread, but they're less than a field goal here. A favorite of 3 or less, Tomlin is 30-26 against the spread, actually a winning record. So again, he's not good as a favorite, but again, as a very short favorite like this, laying 3 or less, he actually does have a winning ATS record in his career. All right, Sunday Night Football, Chicago, Houston. Houston 6-point home favorites, 45.5 the total in this game. So everything I see about the Tennessee game, part of me thinks, wow, they didn't score an offensive touchdown. They're fucked here on the road against Houston. But another part of me says they won and covered despite not scoring an offensive touchdown against Tennessee last week. And to me, it just feels like with Houston, last year was the year to make money with Houston, game to game. This year, I'm not sure. And they're already 0-1 against the spread. They won last week, Craig, against Indianapolis, 29-20. They didn't cover, though.
Nope.
They were 3-point road favorites. They only won by 2. I think there's a tad bit overvalued in the betting markets potentially here with the Houston Texans. And I love this team, and they're great, especially on offense with Stroud. Now they have Mixon, who ran the ball well for them last week. Great addition. And I think since he underestimated the impact Mixon would be on their backfield, because Zach Moss and Chase Brown still have a lot to prove for Cincinnati, trying to replace Joe Mixon. And look what he did for Houston last week, Mixon in his first game with the Texans. Their offense is great. The defense is still somewhat, I've got questions. Indy did move the ball against them. Yeah, up front, there's still some questions at times. Consistent pass rush, can they get it? I like Stingley leading them in the secondary, but Indy was able to move the ball. Question is, can Caleb Williams and this Bears offense, which was just grounded, couldn't do anything against Tennessee, find some better footing here on the road against this Houston defense is the question. But early in the week, I thought, how do you not lay it with Houston after the way the Chicago offense looked last week? But then I thought about it more, and I'm like, well, they still won and covered, even though they didn't score a single offensive touchdown. That's actually a positive for the Bears. So I'm very torn on this game. I doubt I bet the game, even if it is Sunday Night Football. It's an interesting one. I'll be honest. Chicago's offense can't be worse than it was last week. I still think, even though I respect the Bears defense, which I think we saw it second half of last year, Craig, the Chicago defense really got better, and I think they're going to be solid, but they're going to be playing a much better quarterback, a much better offense this week with the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud. So I'm leaning a little to the over. I don't know if I get involved with it, and I think Caleb and the Bears can only be better on offense this week. So I do lean over. Sidewise, it's tough, though. What do you think here? Sunday Night Football, Craig, Chicago, Houston.
You know, and I love the night games. You know, obviously, you know, Thursday night, Monday night, Sunday night. Here's the thing. I'm honestly, when it gets to this game, I'm looking for the Monday Night Football game. I mean, I'm not really. I mean, Bears Texans. This is an interesting matchup solely because the Bears didn't score an offensive touchdown all game. I just don't think that Williams has that it factor yet. I'm not saying he's not going to get there. I'm just saying it's game 2 of the NFL season, right? And now you're playing at Houston, CJ Stroud coming in. It's hard to take this. The over on no, I can't touch it. Even to take the Houston's at -6, because now we don't know what's going to happen with the offense. Just like we were talking, before we went on air, it's just, watching these week 1 matchups. It's week 1s, and it's like, are we thinking too much about certain teams? With how they performed in week 1, are we thinking too less of them? This is one of those games I don't like, because obviously the Bears with the offense, how good can it be? It's Williams' second game. Is he going to get it together? Is he going to be, sustaining drives going down the field? I don't know. I really don't know. And because of that, it's hard to touch. Now we can probably rely on CJ Stroud a little bit more. So I might take maybe a passing prop for him. Maybe he is over in passing yards. But here's the thing: the Bears defense, are they going to be getting after him? You know what I mean? Are they going to be that Bears defense that we know that happened last week? But they're not playing the same kind of offensive caliber team as the Texans right now. So with that being said, I'd be more of looking for props this game, if anything, given the fact it is Sunday Night Football. But like I said earlier, I'm looking more for that Falcons-Eagles game on Monday Night Football than this game. This is a hard one to really judge. It's a hard one to say, hey, over, under. If I'm leaning toward anything, it's the under here, given the fact of the offenses. But, with the Texans at -6, I can't touch it.
For me, it would be, if I play Houston, it's in a teaser with another team, like say Dallas or someone else, put them in a teaser. If I play Chicago, I would still probably need at least 7, to get there with the
yes, 7.5
game. Yeah. So that's where I'm at with Sunday Night Football. All right, Atlanta and Philadelphia on Monday night. We've got the Eagles 6.5-point home favorites, 47 the total. I'm telling you what, there is a long-term trend out there that when you bet on in week 2 a team that lost as a favorite in week 1, which Atlanta was, that team in week 2 is a good bet, which says bet Atlanta here. And I'm kind of leaning Atlanta. Like, Philly is coming off the Brazil trip, the big win against Green Bay, tricky spot. Kirk Cousins was not good, okay? And clearly, I don't know if he's 100%. That would be the big fear I have with Atlanta in this game. He did not look good at all, but that was a very good Pittsburgh defense, a very good Pittsburgh pass rush. I think he'll be better here. He's got a game under his belt, too. That's huge. He should be a little bit more comfortable here. And Philly's defense was giving up big plays, giving up points to Green Bay, and they got to win by a touchdown here to cover this number here against Atlanta. And that long-term trend is a really good one. Like the ATS results for betting on a team in week 2 after a loss as a favorite in week 1, which Atlanta was. And they've been a very good bet in week 2. And that fits the mold here with Atlanta. And also, too, a team that lost in week 1. You just blindly bet a team that lost in week 1 playing a team that won in week 1 in week 2. That's also been a good bet long-term. So all of that points to Atlanta. And I do lean Atlanta. I am concerned about the defense still, though. The Eagles do have a good offense. I like what I saw from Hurts. And they mixed it up. It was a great job by Kellen Moore. Step up from anyone they had in the OC role from Brian Johnson last year. They mixed it up. They've obviously got tons of weapons. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, great tight end. They now have, of course, the great Saquon Barkley at running back who can run it, can catch it out of the backfield. They're so diverse offensively. I think Atlanta might be in tough defensively in this game. But I think offensively they can take a step forward, which is also why I like the over a little bit in this Monday nighter with the Falcons and the Eagles. And the Eagles are trying to play faster on offense this year. They're trying to play with some pace, tempo. They said they want to mix some of that in, no huddle offense into what they do. So that's good news for over bettors as well. So lean Falcons, like the over as well here on Monday Night Football. Craig, final game. What do you think? Atlanta, Philly.
So, I I hate to be that guy, but I like the Eagles here at -6.5, and I totally get the thought process that goes into that. I like it, but when it comes to numbers and stats for teams and what the team is made of, I don't see Kirk Cousins really going crazy in this game. Unlike like last game, he didn't go crazy either. They're playing a much better opponent. Now, the Steelers are no slouch. Let's be real. They're a legit team. But you have to think about it. Who played quarterback for the Steelers last game? Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Okay. They did mediocre. You know what I mean?
They moved the football quite well against Atlanta. They just stalled in the red zone and had to settle for field goals in Atlanta territory. They still moved the ball, actually, Pittsburgh.
Right. And now we're having, lo and behold, the Saquon Barkley come out of the backfield. Right now, we're looking at a much different, balanced offense coming from the Philadelphia Eagles. This game would be definitely a game I would have player props on Saquon, whether it's catches, rushing yards, even I would do probably receiving and rushing yards plus the over on that. I don't think this game is close. I really don't. I see this being a 10 to 14 point game for the Eagles at home. I think you said the over, right? You took the over. That I will go with that. I agree with you there. But I don't see the Falcons making this a close game. This is another big game for Eagles fans all over the place. It's just Falcons at Eagles. I'm excited for this. Just a beatdown to the Atlanta Falcons from the Philadelphia Eagles. Look for Saquon to have a great game here. Here's the thing. I don't know if quarterback play is going to be over here. I really don't. I don't know if we can get a ton of yards from the Eagles. I know they allowed 260 passing yards and a pair of touchdowns to Jordan Love last week, but I don't know. Kirk Cousins, is he going to be the Kirk Cousins of old or the Kirk Cousins of new? I don't know. Just like you said, is he going through anything right now injury-wise? Are we going to have 100% Kirk Cousins or are we not?
It's a good point. What will we get from Kirk Cousins? The way I see it is he looked like a guy that hadn't played in a while, coming off a serious injury. He clearly looked like it, not 100% in week one. You got to hope that a game under his belt helps him. That's kind of what I'm going on with, hoping Atlanta can contribute to the scoreboard enough for the over. And my hope that if I take Atlanta, and I haven't decided yet, but my lean is Atlanta, that game under his belt will help him in the offense be better. I've still got to see the Eagles defense play better than they did against Green Bay. Now, I know it was Jordan Love and the Packers, but see them play a little bit better too on defense this week. All right, great stuff. Craig the Leg Peterson, great job. This has been so much fun talking NFL Week 2, getting you ready for the games. But before we wrap up, as we always do, we got to end with best bet. What do you got, Craig, for your best bet here for Week 2?
You know what? My best, and it's actually a parlay. I had to throw it out there. And it's tonight. I'm excited about tonight's game with the Bills at Miami. I like the Bills at -2.5, winning by a field goal. I think it's 27-24 Bills, and I also like Josh Allen's to parlay at -2.5 for the Bills. I also like the over here at 48.5, and then parlayed with Josh Allen 250 plus passing yards. And I'm going to go with, I think it's 50 plus, or no, 25 plus rushing yards for Josh Allen. So big parlay, taking risks, taking chances, but I really like it. I think the payout would be great. Like I said, Bills -2.5 with the over at 48.5. Josh Allen to have 250 plus passing yards, and as well with the Josh Allen over 25 plus rushing yards.
Wow, how about that? A nice little same game parlay best bet for Bills Dolphins Thursday Night Football right there from Craig Peterson. For those people that maybe don't get to this video until Friday, Saturday, if you had a Sunday best bet, what would it be?
That's tough. You know what? I would probably go with the Cowboys and Saints game. I like the over in total points for the Cowboys. I also like the -6.5 as well. So what I would do, I don't know what that would look like on paper for the betting world, but I would take the Cowboys -6.5 with the over total points. Um, Dak Prescott, I don't know what his is right now. I'd have to look that up. But if it would be the Cowboys at -6.5. I might even want to take them at -9.5 and boost that up. I just don't see the Saints making it a close game at all at the Cowboys, especially with the way they're playing right now and the well-balanced offense that they have going. Saints, I think that first game was a fluke. I don't see Derek Carr, being that kind of guy against that Cowboys defense. I don't see him having that much time in the pocket as well with the Cowboys defense. I would take the over for the Cowboys with the spread.
There you go. Over team total is what we'll give you for a Sunday best bet with the Dallas Cowboys. All right, my best bet for week 2. I am going to go to that game that we mentioned with the Giants and the Commanders. I'm going to go over 43. I think Daniel Jones against a Washington defense that was wretched last week. I think he'll be better. I think the offense will be better. And I think Jaden Daniels taking a step down against the Giants defense can move the football, put up points. So let's go with Giants Commanders over 43 for my best bet here for week 2 in the NFL. Craig, great stuff. Awesome show. Hit the like button, everyone watching on YouTube. Appreciate it very much. For Craig the Leg Peterson, I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoy NFL Week 2 and good luck. We'll see you again next week right here for another NFL edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.